Oklahoma City may be the 47th largest television market in the United States, yet it's home to an NBA franchise, the Women's College World Series, a slew of minor league clubs, and in 2028, 2 Olympic events. Sports have become a vital piece of the city's economy, and it's growing rapidly. I'm Justin Birnbaum, a staff writer here at Forbes, and joining me today to talk about their growth is Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt. Thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely, Justin. Thanks for having me.
So I got to ask you, with everything going on, is Oklahoma City finally a basketball town? I know Oklahoma football, Oklahoma State football has dominated, but what's the feeling like?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've now had 17 seasons with the Thunder, 19 total seasons if you count the Hornets, which was kind of our audition for the NBA. We are absolutely through and through, we are basketball fans now, and I think pretty sophisticated basketball fans. But you're right. I mean, our history was in football, but we're all in on hoops now.
So obviously being in the midst of the NBA Finals right now, how has that swept up the city? What's the energy like? How is it changing things? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's all encompassing, and I mean, you could probably even hear it in my voice. I think I'm exhausted from cheering. You know, I mean, everybody's whole life right now is revolving around the Thunder as we make this run to the NBA Finals. So, it's kind of hard, probably, maybe for people who aren't from a city that size, plus a city that's still relatively new to the NBA. To really understand just how the city and the team are intertwined. You know, I mean, it feels like we're kind of just one and the same. And this moment that we're having in making the NBA Finals has really become a prism through which we're viewing our whole journey to this point as a city. You know, not just as a basketball team, but really all of the investments and all of the vision that led to this moment. Really, for us, I think go far beyond anything Sam Presti ever dreamed. It really is about a whole city pulling together to create the possibility of this moment.
You know, obviously a finals run is great. It's never expected. There's a lot of advantages that come for a city when that happens. You know, obviously the increased economics. Mm-hmm. How does the finals run affect the city? How has that been translating back to the taxpayers?
Sure. So I think it's on 2 levels. I mean, first of all, of course, there's a lot of games being played that wouldn't otherwise be played when you make it this far in the playoffs. So you've got, you know, we're in the 4th round of the playoffs. So that's obviously a lot of economic activity downtown, and that's really cool. I would say, though, that the far more impactful result is probably a little harder to quantify, and that is just the platform that this gives the city, you know. We just had, you know, games 1 and 2 of the NBA Finals in OKC, and there were hundreds of members of the media from around the world. You know, I was doing interviews with Italy and Canada and the UK and Norway. I mean, like, and we took out 2 sections of the stands, 2 sections of seating in the arena just for the media. That sort of platform, especially for a city like Oklahoma City, that's going to open doors that we'll be walking through for years to come. You know, this having the team is pretty impactful to our city in terms of elevating us on the national and global stage. But then when they're this good, it's just a whole nother level. And it means so much to us that billions of people around the world will pay at least a passing glance to what's going on in the NBA Finals. And we hope hundreds of millions of them at least will actually watch a little bit of the games. We'll see images of our city. We'll think about Oklahoma City. And that has a real-world economic impact. It may be that takes years to fully develop for those opportunities to present themselves. But I often say that people don't invest in, visit, or live in cities they've never heard of. And as of the last month, you know, billions of people have thought about Oklahoma City in ways that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. And that is important to us for sure.
That's definitely a fair point. Flashing back a little bit, obviously, when the team moved from Seattle, it was a little bit controversial. And, you know, you're changing markets, obviously, to a smaller market, but Oklahoma City has supported its team from day one. I mean, at one point, you had a sellout streak of, I believe it was 419 games. What about this small market town has been, and I don't mean to call it a town, but has made it able to support a team like this on such a level?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, I will put things in perspective, and I put out a stat a couple of weeks ago that then Commissioner Silver used in his press conference to open the finals. 90% of Americans live in a place, a city or some other place that's smaller than Oklahoma City. So that's 300 million Americans who live somewhere who look up to Oklahoma City. So it's sometimes you get into kind of a mindset where the whole world is defined by who has an NBA team, and you forget that 90% of Americans live in places that don't have NBA teams, right? So if you're in that club at all, you're in a pretty big market. But right, relative to New York and other larger markets, I get it. But the reality is that just to be in that game, you have to be a certain size. So anyways, with that aside, yeah, I mean, I think that, we obviously have, it's our only team. I think that's important. I don't know that a market our size, you said 47th largest TV market. I think we say 42nd largest MSA. A market our size probably would have trouble with multiple teams in the top leagues. That would be challenging just from a raw numbers standpoint, not having enough eyeballs, corporate presence, ticket buyers. But because we just have this one team, we can really rally around it. And we also, there is still almost a patriotism around supporting the team, a sense that this is our identity. This is the thing that elevated us to the top tier of American cities. We haven't had the team long enough that we've forgotten what life was like before it. And, we just went through a community conversation as we voted on a new arena that got 71% of the vote and is going to, preserve our relationship with the Thunder for another quarter century. And that was kind of an opportunity for us to really, again, talk about what this team has meant to us. And we certainly now, I think, really understand, and it's really pervasive across the community. We really understand what it has meant to us, and it has so much more to do than just basketball. If you look at Oklahoma City before the Thunder and after the Thunder, the food scene is much better. The art scene is much better. We've risen up the population rankings. We've diversified our economy. We have the lowest unemployment in the country right now. So many things that have nothing to do on their face with basketball have changed in OKC. And I think my view, and it's a widely held view in OKC, is that this is not a coincidence. That this is what happens when you get the closest thing America has to bestowing a blue ribbon on their top cities, which is a team in the NBA, the NFL, or the MLB. It just changed our status. It inherently changed how we view ourselves and how the world views us. So, yeah, we rally around that team big time. And it's still challenging, I think, from the business side, when you think about like local TV deals and all of that. There's still some like challenging aspects, I think, to running a team in a market our size. But we certainly do everything we possibly can to offset that. Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned the arena, Thunder getting a new home. Yeah.
A project that's going to cost at least $900 million. That's coming from a 72-month tax, $78 million from the MAPS 4 public development program, and then the balance, a small amount coming from Thunder ownership.
Right.
I say a small amount, I believe it was $50 million, but
right.
Relatively speaking. The Thunder, we value them at $3.65 billion. The NBA has a massive new TV deal, $76 billion over 11 years. I'm curious, one of the things we always kind of look at is kind of this line between public and private financing. And you said it yourself, 71% voted for this. So why is this responsibility so important to the taxpayer? Why does the city have the responsibility for such a lucrative business like the NBA?
The simplest answer is because nobody else was going to do it. There is a different model if you're in a market our size, or if you're in New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles, and sometimes when people say, well, look at this deal and they compare it to this deal, it's really apples to oranges. We're building through this plan that you just described. It's our fourth arena basically in city history, and all four have been built by the taxpayers. And so, yeah, like the $50 million contribution from the team, from some people's perspective, that's smaller than what teams have done in other cities. On the other hand, that's $50 million more than we've ever gotten for an arena in Oklahoma City. We were always spending 100% of the dollars to build our arenas until this point. We finally have somebody who might help us out. So, I think at the end of the day, though, agreement requires the assent of two parties. And, I didn't have other NBA teams, blowing up my phone, asking, telling me they were offering me more money. I mean, the reality is, when you're where we are market size, market-wise, you got to do what you got to do. And I think that that's just the cold, hard reality of it. I used to say, as we were working on the initiative and seeking public support, I said, this is really this is very much a proposal for realists. Like, if the only real negotiating leverage you have in that situation is your willingness to walk away from the table and say, we don't want to have a long-term relationship with Major League Professional Sports, and ultimately the people of Oklahoma City didn't want to walk away from that table, So we built the current arena that the team is playing in 100% with public dollars. And the reality is that private sector actors don't build arenas in the 47th largest TV market, So if we want to have nice things, if we want to have the teams and the amenities that people have in much larger places, we're probably going to have to offset that. And that's just the reality of it. And we just have to decide, the third option doesn't exist. The idea that somebody else is going to pay for it and we're going to get to have these things. So you just have to decide, is it worth it? And I think that clearly we got to vote. I love that, right? I would tell anyone, like, we all voted. No, this wasn't forced on anybody.
Yeah.
We made a conscious choice. We decided, it is worth it, and it's worth it because we have all seen, as I said earlier, life before and after the NBA, and we don't take it for granted. It's made all the difference in the world, and really, when you actually, if you could quantify the GDP difference and the population difference and all the other things that have changed over the last 2 decades, you would say it's absolutely a good investment. So I don't know that there's another city really in the United States over the last 2 decades that's passed an arena initiative. And not only did we pass ours, we got 71%, which is about 100% of all people willing to even consider it. I'm in politics, and if you get 71%, that's 100%. Like, that's unanimity, because there's like always a quarter of people who will vote against anything, So that was an extraordinarily high number, but it showed our passion, obviously, for the team, and it showed our appreciation and understanding for the necessity of doing this, and our understanding for what the team has meant to our city. I've often said, and you can appreciate this, that in the 2 years leading up to that vote, I felt like I was kind of training up my 700,000 residents to be amateur experts in the business of sports, and again, like, really also helping them understand the realistic outlook here, and also reminding them occasionally, like, that there's other options here. And as you alluded to earlier, we remember how we got the team, and there's 18 markets in the United States larger than Oklahoma City that don't have an NBA team. And some of them have $1 billion arena, like Seattle, sitting there right now, ready for a team. So, we had to be competitive. And again, our voters understood that in the end. And we're going to be able to show some renderings this summer for the new arena. It's going to be awesome. We're finally bringing a budget to the table that we can really have a top-tier NBA arena. Our current arena was built for $90 million, and we put another $100 million into it when the team relocated in 2008. That's still a $200 million arena, basically, in a world of billion-dollar arenas. So it's going to be a really special project for our city. But most importantly, it secures 25 years from the Thunder in the new arena, which functionally is basically about 30 years from the time of the vote. And that means we have this amazing experience for another generation.
Yeah, and another benefit to it, obviously, is this mixed-use development project that's coming down the pipe. When you have a major professional sports team that unlocks opportunities like this in a lot of cases, and this is a $2 billion private project. How is that going to kind of elevate what you're already aiming to accomplish with the arena?
And you're talking about kind of plans to develop around the arena.
Correct.
And, so the listeners here would not necessarily know, but our new arena will be literally across the street from our current arena. And it is very likely, I've said this publicly, it doesn't make a lot of sense for a market our size to have 2 arenas across the street from each other. So, the long-term prognosis for our current arena, the arena currently hosting the NBA Finals, is not great. Like, it's probably going to be redeveloped. And to your point, I think the team is very interested in emulating some of the things we've seen in other places, like the Deer District in Milwaukee and other places where you have sort of some immediately adjacent entertainment options, which in our current situation, we don't really have that. We have a great entertainment district in Bricktown, but that's a few blocks away. So that is definitely part of the long-term plan, is to develop around it, immediately around it, possibly on the site of our current arena. You know, all of that's got a little bit of time to it, and some of those are the last dominoes that will fall in this whole endeavor. But definitely something that we're excited about. And we are ever changing in downtown Oklahoma City. And if sometimes I'll run into people and they'll say they've been to Oklahoma City, and I'll say, well, how long ago? And if they say that they were there maybe more than 10 years ago, I'll say, you haven't been to Oklahoma City. I mean, even our last trip to the NBA Finals in 2012, I could show you a picture and virtually nothing that's there today. The park, the Omni Hotel, the convention center, several skyscrapers. None of those things existed the last time we hosted the finals, and that was only 13 years ago. So there's a lot of change, and certainly this arena project and its surroundings will be another evolution in our city in the years to come.
Well, taking a break from the Thunder for a second, Oklahoma City has been the longtime home of the Women's College World Series. And, it's not necessarily, the NBA Finals, but I'm curious, that just wrapped up, great series between Texas Tech. What has that brought into the economy? What has that done for the city? How has that changed things?
So, first of all, what you're really honing in on is how we've leveraged sports. It's turned into an amazing community building initiative for us. And to some degree, much of it was organic, but now it feels like an intentional strategy. And in the 80s, and we just recently found out this history, I didn't know this, but actually it was surplus funds from the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles that was the seed money for us to build our stadium, our softball stadium in Oklahoma City. And we kept improving upon it through the decades. And we first got the Women's College World Series in the early 90s when it was not a big deal. And then ESPN really elevated it, and it's become really one of the great events in American sport. That stadium is packed. So today the stadium, after a $30 million investment by taxpayers in 2017, is the largest softball stadium in the world by 2.5 times. And so it's the largest, it's why we call ourselves the softball capital of the world. And now the Women's College World Series has become this huge event. So the TV ratings broke all the records this year, as did the ticket sales. So we ended up, I think, nearly 120,000 people came to the games. Actually, if you don't actually have that many visitors come to the NBA Finals. Most of the tickets are being used by locals, season ticket holders, right? So the reality is, the direct economic impact of the Women's College World Series is much larger than the NBA Finals, because it just brings a lot more visitors. Obviously the NBA Finals, as we talked about a minute ago, maybe has a lot more global reach in terms of building our brand and our identity. But in terms of like hotel rooms and sales tax, the Women's College World Series is a huge event for the city, and it's every single year. I wish the NBA Finals were every single year in OKC, but
fingers crossed.
That's not something you can count on. But the Women's College World Series, you can count on being in OKC through at least 2035. That's how long our current deal is. And it's become an institution. And we love also the brand and identity that it brings, as well as you've got ESPN all the way through the spring saying the road to OKC and all of that.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool event for us, and we're very proud of it. And it's opened the door for us. Now we're going to host the 2028 Olympics at that stadium.
Well, that was exactly my next point. Obviously, having that infrastructure made it, a no-brainer to host the event for the 2028 Olympic Games. I'm curious kind of what your expectations are. Obviously, that's not the only event you're hosting, but your expectations for the 2028 Games, how will that look for the city's economy?
Yeah, well, you say it's a no-brainer. We're 1,000 miles from LA. It was a pretty unique thing, and again, it's an example of leveraging sports. That's become obviously very much a part of our identity. We invested in that softball stadium kind of through the organic process I described a moment ago, and then similarly in our original MAPS initiative. So this is a sales tax vote called Maps. That's a very well-known brand in OKC. And in the original Maps in 1993, we approved the arena that the NBA Finals is in right now. And we approved dams on our river because we were sick of mowing it twice a year. We wanted to actually have water in our river. Well, that very surprisingly turned into a rowing community on our river. And that rowing community ultimately said, you know, if you really want to have a comprehensive paddle sport facility, you should have a whitewater course. And so the third MAPS initiative, MAPS 3, we just number them like a movie series now. So MAPS 3 built a whitewater course. So that's the only whitewater course west of the Mississippi. So I say all that to say that as LA began to think about, you know, where they could put all these events, and they're taking a very sustainable approach to this, and the IOC is certainly encouraging that, you know, because everybody's kind of trying to do a better job of not creating venues that become an albatross in their communities that actually are useful moving forward. LA really didn't want to build new venues, right? And so they looked at OKC and they said, okay, so they've got a whitewater venue that they already built willingly. They plan to use into the long run. And then, of course, also have literally the world's greatest softball stadium. So through all of that, we have ended up hosting 2 sports in the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. And I want to be clear, there's no other city currently outside of Southern California that is slated to host one entire sport. And we have 2 entire sports. And there's 7 events as part of that, because canoe slalom actually has 6 different events, 3 for men's and 3 for women's. In Paris, those events lasted for 10 days. And then in softball, it's just one event, but it's a week-long tournament to decide the winner. So for us, I mean, it's beyond our wildest dreams that we would have, you know, 7 gold medals put around the necks of the world's greatest athletes in Oklahoma City in the summer of 2028. And again, it's like a testament to our willingness to invest in ourselves, our belief in sports, our vision of what we could accomplish. And yet, even in this case, I'd have to say we would never even have dreamed that we could have had Summer Olympic events. But it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for that whole part of the country. And I think, you know, it's helping LA have a sustainable Olympics. And we certainly have committed to LA, to our partners in LA 28, and the city of LA, that, you know, the fans and the athletes and the officials are going to have an experience that's world class in OKC. And we're already gearing up. You know, it's 3 years from next month, and we are well underway in our planning. But we've already done the biggest investment. We built the venues, you know, but we want to also obviously program around all of that and make sure that it is a very special time in OKC's history. But when you think about the Women's College World Series, the NBA Finals, the 2028 Olympics, it's a pretty special time in OKC, and so much of it revolves around sports.
Yeah, and like you said, the Olympics are coming up quickly. I mean, there are other sports elements there too. We mentioned earlier, you know, minor league clubs around the city and stuff. Looking ahead, you know, obviously your sole job as mayor isn't kind of responsible for the sports economy. It's only a piece of it. But I'm wondering, you know, long term, what can this do for the other aspects of your job, making life in the city better for its citizens? And why be bullish to keep betting on sports in Oklahoma City going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, like, MAPS also built a great AAA baseball park, which is the home of the Dodgers AAA affiliate. And MAPS 4 is building a soccer stadium that we're going to be developing around and having a big development just adjacent to downtown. And we're even in conversations about a professional women's team as well. But to your question, yeah, it makes everything possible, you know. And I said this when we were voting on the arena. I said, you know, if you think, and this is a perfectly justifiable argument. If you said, you know what, I'd rather not spend $1 billion on an arena. I want to put that into mental health funding, and I want to put that into education, and I want to put that into homelessness. I understand all that, right? Like, how can I argue with that? Those are very important things. But back in the 80s and 90s, when we didn't have an NBA team, and that's the future that we were facing without, you know, investment in a new arena, we didn't have that money. It's not like you can move it from one pocket to the other. It just goes away. You know, like the economic growth that we've experienced by being an NBA city, by being a major league sports city, has made it possible for us to invest in all these things. MAPS 4 has mental health crisis centers. It has a family justice center for survivors of domestic violence. It has a civil rights center. It has a diversion hub helping people engaging with the criminal justice system to divert away from jail or prison. I could go on and on and on. We didn't have those opportunities economically before we had the Thunder. So I often said, I'm going in there and I'm voting yes for an arena because I want funding for homelessness, because I want funding for all of these other things. Show me like the small city in America that doesn't have Major League Professional Sports and has this unbelievable social safety net, that doesn't exist. Like if you're small, you're small in every way. You don't have the economic wherewithal to support people at all socioeconomic levels. And so to me, they go hand in hand. So absolutely. I mean, it's fun to sit here and talk about the NBA Finals and all that. Absolutely. But to your point, it has an absolute economic value to our city. It makes so many other important things possible, certainly from a tax standpoint, certainly from an economic standpoint, and also from a direct standpoint. Last Friday I was standing there with Commissioner Adam Silver and the Thunder, the head of Emirates USA, and we were at a Boys and Girls Club in Oklahoma City cutting the ribbon on a new investment in that Boys and Girls Club that was part of the Finals Legacy Project, right? It was a project we got as a community just because our team made the finals. As a mayor, I've cut the ribbon on dozens of basketball courts and reading rooms and even a Paul George fishing dock. I mean, like the NBA team also, and the league and the team and the players, they make all these investments in the community as well. So anyways, it's just a win-win-win all the way around. Do you have to invest a little bit? You have to spend money to make money? Of course. But we have seen time and time again in Oklahoma City, all of our investments have paid off. And where could I make a statement like that would make more sense, but in front of a Forbes sign? But our investments in ourselves, I think, have really been unique on a national level. And that's the one thing I tell mayors everywhere is just invest in yourself. That's what Oklahoma City has done, and look at the payoff that we're enjoying.
Very quickly before I let you go, prediction for the finals?
When is this going out, like immediately?
Immediately.
Well, okay. I mean, honestly, obviously the Pacers, showed a little bit of strength in winning Game 1. On the other hand, the Thunder have led like 99% of the minutes of Games 1 and 2. I'm sure that the Indiana crowd will be amazing. Not quite as great as OKC's, but pretty good. And so I think a split in Indianapolis is probably the safest bet. That does, though, restore Oklahoma City's home court advantage to get one in Indy, and certainly that's the goal. And so, then I think you'd be seeing the series coming back to OKC for Game 5, and basically at that point, much like it was in the Denver series, which was kind of OKC's toughest series to this point, coming back with basically as a 3-game series with 2 games in OKC, where we have the strongest home court in the NBA right now. So I clearly like our odds, but I would not be shocked for it to, be a little bit longer series than maybe the prognosticators were saying before it began, mostly because of the Pacers getting that Game 1 victory. But, Thunder in 6, Thunder in 7, I think is where I'm at right now.
Mayor David Holt, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you.